But with that, Tom, I just want to welcome you out today. Today's with us is Tom Tabler from currently Mississippi State, soon to be University of Tennessee. So he's going to talk to us today about some of the issues and how to look for water issues and kind of investigating things along that line. And with that, Tom, if you'd like to share your screen, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, Guy, we'll see. My technologically challenged mind can figure all of this stuff out. So have you got it?
Yep, that's looking good right there.
Okay. I think we should be all right then. Okay, so kind of how I put this together is just some of what I go by, whenever I get a call, either from a grower themselves or from a, broiler manager or complex manager or somewhere. The way I do those things, if the grower calls me and says, hey, I think maybe I've got problems with my water, could you come and test it? I'll be glad to go and get a sample. But usually if it's the grower themselves that calls, I will ask them to get a hold of their service tech or get a hold of their broiler manager and let those folks know what they're wanting and let those folks know that I'm going to come as long as they're okay with it. I don't want to go behind the integrator's back or anything. So I make sure that the grower has let the integrator know. Sometimes the integrator themselves calls me and says, hey, we've got a grower that we think maybe has got water issues. If they call, I just go ahead and go out there and get a sample. Sometimes they meet me there. Sometimes the service tech's there. Sometimes the broiler manager's there. Sometimes they're not there. But as long as they know I'm coming, I don't think too much about it and don't worry about it. But if the grower calls without the company knowing what's going on, I ask them to get a hold of the company and let them know that I'm going to be on the farm and going to take some samples, just because I have to work with those guys and I don't want to burn any bridges or make anybody mad at me. So I try to make sure everything's as open as what it can be. It's kind of how I put this thing together this morning. A little bit of an outline, what are the issues? What kind of problems are you having? What are you trying to worry about, or what doesn't seem to be working right? NAE challenges, which is a huge deal anymore these days. pH and biofilm on that water line, what you've got on your system, not maybe just necessarily the water lines in the house, but maybe the supply line that's coming from the well to the house. So it's not just your inside lines you have to worry about. You've got to worry about your supply lines as well. A little bit on line cleaning, a little bit on water basics, and then the big question at the end in terms of, is this or is this not what you're trying to do? So what kind of problems are folks seeing? Do you have high mortality? Have you got poor flock performance, wet litter, enteric issues? Do you have a lot of loose droppings, gut sloughing? Are you seeing a lot of orange or maybe droppings that are just watery, way too loose, which makes the litter wet? Poor vaccination results, disease issues, flock after flock after flock. Have you always got something that's going wrong? One flock every now and then, yeah, you can kind of account for, but if you've got disease issues, flock after flock after flock, there's something going on that you need to be aware of. And low water consumption. And we'll talk a little bit more about low water consumption later on, because I've got some certain aquifers in certain areas that you can look at the water consumption on those folks, and you can look at water consumption in different areas where folks are pulling from different aquifers, and you see a big difference. And we'll talk a little bit about that here later on. So kind of a better start for your birds, improved feed conversion and growth rate, less morbidity, less mortality. If you've got, good water quality and everything's working right on that farm, and usually in that case, better overall performance usually leads to increased pay. The chickens do better, you make more money if your chickens are doing good and they're performing at their best. And again, birds are genetically a lot different today than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, especially 15 or 20 years ago. It's not the same bird today that we've grown in the past. They grow faster, they've got better yields, feed conversions are better. But again, to get that, we had to give something up. And a lot of what we gave up was the immune system. Chickens today do not have a really strong immune system. When I was little, we did not grow commercial chickens, but we had backyard chickens, and those things were tough. You couldn't kill them with a stick. They didn't grow very fast, and it took a while to get them to eating size, but by gosh, they were hardy. It's not that way today. Chickens today, they do grow fast. They do have good feed conversions. They do yield a lot of breast meat if you give them exactly what they want. But you've got to give them exactly what they want, or their immune system falls apart pretty fast. Again, NAE programs are pretty much everywhere today. Just about every company these days has at least some percentage of their production dedicated to some type of no antibiotic ever program. And again, good water quality is just part of best management practices. Without good water quality, it's going to be hard to meet integrator guidelines and the expectations on how those chickens perform, weight gain, feed conversion, livability, whatever, and consumer pressure, animal welfare. There's a lot of people watching us today in terms of how we take care of our critters to make sure that they're being cared for the way they ought to be. And in addition to chickens, poultry houses can grow a lot of other things too, besides just the chickens. E. coli, salmonella, campylobacter, pseudomonas, staphylococcus, listeria, all of these things, algae, molds, yeast, parasites, viruses, enteric bacteria. There's a lot of things that can live and grow inside that chicken house besides just your chickens. So kind of put together a checklist of information. Know what you're working with, know what you're up against. What is your water supply? Where is it coming from? Is it a municipal supply, or is it coming from a well? If it is municipal, how far is that line running from the main line before it gets to your chicken houses? And do you have backflow preventers on those lines? Well depth. If you've got a well, how deep is that well? Where's the placement at? Is it sitting right beside the chicken house? Is it across the fence out in the cow pasture? Are you having to pump water uphill from the well? Do you have any issues with that? Is it a pond or a stream or a spring or some type of open water source? Years and years ago, and this is more years than I want to care to think back to, but years ago, back in the early 80s, when I was servicing chickens, I had several growers that pulled water for their chicken houses out of a small lake they had on their property or out of a pond. And people just don't do that anymore because the risk is just too great. Water test. Does anybody test water? There are bunches and bunches of people in Mississippi that have never had a water test done. They drill a well, they plumb it all in, they build their chicken houses, plumb everything in, and as long as there's water coming out of the nipples when the chickens want to drink, or as long as there's water over the cool cell when they want the cool cells to run, they have no clue what's in that water. But again, minerals can be an issue. Bacteria can be an issue. You need drip samples. You need swab samples. If you've got something going on, you need to know, what's in your water, because maybe you don't have the best water quality, and maybe that is affecting how those birds perform. How old is the system? Drinkers, regulators, standpipes, all that stuff wears out after a while. Plumbing, how long has your plumbing been in there? Distribution lines, the lines inside the house, and again, the supply lines. Check your flow rates and make sure that you've got as much water coming to that house as what that house needs. The drinkers are going to have a certain amount, the cool cells are going to have a certain amount. And if you can't provide that, and in the middle of July and August, when you've got big chickens, you're shortchanging something. Any changes or work that's been done to the water system? Have you had to pull the well pump and replace the pump? When you got everything out laying on the ground, did it get infected with something? Was it laying in the middle of the cow pasture? Have you had to cut into the lines coming from the wellhead? Did you run into it with the brush hog and damage the wellhead? There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. Does the producer clean the system with anything between flocks? Again, in Mississippi, we've got a bunch of people that do not do a very good job of line cleaning. Very few people in this state treat their water supply. They don't use chlorine. They don't use anything to try to adjust the pH. They just, again, plumb it in, turn it on, and that's what they go with. But again, if they are using something, what are they using? How are they cleaning lines? What are they cleaning it with? Is it the whole system, or is it just the lines inside the barn or inside the chicken house? Or are they cleaning the underground lines from the well to the chicken house? What products do they use? What are they using? Be aware of that. If they are using something, make sure they're using the right stuff. Is it sanitizers, acids? Do they run vitamins or electrolytes? Do they vaccinate through the water supply? All of this stuff is going to make a difference in terms of what's going on inside that chicken house in terms of water quality. Again, if you don't know what's in that water, you need to find out what's in that water if you think you've got something wrong. Minerals can have a big effect on quality. Algae and fungi, again, can have a big effect. They build up in the lines, they restrict the flow, they clog the nipples up, the nipples want to drip, or they don't want to put out any water at all. Certain types of bacteria can make the flock sick. pH that's either too high or too low can be equally bad. Again, the folks that are in the know that think they figured all this stuff out think somewhere between 6.2 and 6.8 pH is the sweet spot. I don't know how they talk to the chickens and figure this out, but supposedly that's ideal. There is a range outside of that works, but supposedly that's supposed to be the best. And really a water sample, especially for minerals, a water sample is reasonably cheap. I send a lot of stuff from here to the University of Arkansas because they'll do it a lot cheaper than what the chem lab here will do it. But you can get, University of Arkansas has got a package where you can get 24 minerals and the pH of that water for $20. And that's pretty cheap insurance to know just exactly what you've got in your water or whether it's a problem. Now, if you want to do bacteria, yeast, mold, E. coli, that's a little more expensive, but they will put together a kit for you and send you that kit. They'll put it in a little styrofoam ice chest. They'll put Whirlpack bags in it. They'll put vials with buffered peptone water in it. They'll send you the tweezers. They'll send you a sponge to do swab samples with. They'll send you the instructions on how to do it. They'll put a little ice pack in there with it because, again, bacteria and minerals are a little bit different. Minerals, if it takes 3 or 4 days to get there, the mineral concentration of that water isn't going to change. Bacteria, it will change. So you need to ship that back to them as quick as you can overnight if possible. And they'll put a little cool pack in there with it for you to freeze back and keep that water cool whenever you send it back to them. But again, that's pretty cheap insurance to know whether you've got something wrong in your water and need to know whether you need to try to take action or not. So what can minerals do? Change the taste of the water. If you've got very much zinc in that water, chickens don't have a lot of taste buds, but they have a few. They can tell when there's something there that they don't like. So it can change the taste of the water. It can affect the feed absorption if you've got a lot of sulfur in that water. Nickel in the water can damage the heart and the liver. Nitrates in the water can damage the neural system. Flushing and diarrhea can be caused if you've got too much salt in the water. Because again, if you've got a lot of sodium or you've got a lot of chloride in your water supply, they don't need all that extra sodium and chloride because they're getting all the salt they need in the feed. So if you're overdosing them on salt in the water, you're probably going to see a lot of loose droppings and a lot of wet litter and a lot of flushing because they are trying to get that salt flushed out of their system. So what's in the water? Minerals come from the water source. They can build up in your water lines. This is a picture of a big Bubba type filter. It's orange because there's a lot of iron in that filter. That filter was initially white whenever it started. But again, there's a lot of iron in this person's water. So this is downstream of where their filter inside their control room is. The little filters are in their control room. They're catching a little bit, but this big guy is catching a lot of it. And these folks could not manage their filters inside their chicken house. There are 2 little ones inside the control room until they put this big Bubba type filter on there because they were changing filters every 2 or 3 days because there was so much iron in the water that it was clogging their filters up. Again, minerals can affect bird health and waterline performance. Living organisms, the bacteria, the algae, the fungi that come in there, both from the water source and maybe from the poultry house environment if there's something inside that chicken house. Again, nitrates indicate usually some type of fecal contamination. You should not see nitrates in a water supply unless something somewhere is not right. It causes poor growth rate, causes poor feed conversion. Again, sulfates, magnesium, high sodium or chloride can cause flushing, wet litter, high ammonia levels inside that house makes the disease challenge worse. Makes paw quality issues a whole lot worse. If you can keep your litter dry, in most cases, your paw quality is going to be pretty good. But chickens walking around on wet litter all the time, in addition to what problems the ammonia is being caused by the wet litter, you're going to have a lot of paw quality issues as well. Algae, bacteria, fungi all thrive off a certain type of minerals, depending on what it is. Equipment can be damaged or may see poor performance in the presence of certain minerals. That bottom picture is a picture of a cool cell pad. A cool cell pad generally by itself is not very heavy. It doesn't weigh very much because it's just a little bit of cardboard and a bunch of holes. This particular cool cell pad weighed about 50 pounds because it's got all of that calcium and carbonate and stuff built up into that pad. So these folks basically had to change their whole set of cool cell pads after that house was about 3 years old because there was so much mineral buildup inside the flutes on their cool cell pads that they couldn't pull air through the dang things anymore. So again, this is an extreme case. I've never seen another system quite this bad, but again, you run into that stuff from time to time. Iron promotes E. coli and Pseudomonas growth. Again, chloride and sodium can cause flushing because you've got too much salt. Calcium, magnesium can cause scaling. Scaling is rough on the inside of that water line. When it builds up, it gives bacteria and the bad things a good place to hide because the inside of that pipe is not smooth anymore whenever you get a lot of scale build up. Flushing can result from magnesium, again, salt in the water supply, sulfates in the water supply. Decreased water intake is going to result from iron because it gives that water a bitter taste if there's enough of it in there. Copper also gives it a bitter taste. Zinc gives it an astringent taste, and they just don't like the taste of it. Again, they don't have a lot of taste buds, but chickens have enough that they can tell when something's not quite to their liking. Intestinal irritation, poor growth, weak bones, all can result from too much nitrate in the water, too much lead, too much copper. A little bit on NAE. What do NAE and water have in common? Removing antibiotics has created a big hole in chicken production practices today. And there's a lot of people making a lot of products to try to fill those holes up. Some of this stuff is probably viable and is worth the effort to go to. Some of it probably is not. But there's growers hunting for all kinds of different supplements to try to take the place of what we used to use that antibiotics used to fix for us. So drinking system is the easiest way to deliver a lot of these supplements. It's easier to do through the water than it is through the feed or through any other method. So water quality is a whole lot more important today, and we focus a whole lot more on it with NAE production just because we have to. There's been a huge increase in drinker line issues since most of these companies went to some version of NAE production. Water is the most important nutrient for chickens. We tend to take that for granted a lot of the time. But chickens are going to go through twice as much water as what they do feed. Yeah, feed is the most expensive item that it takes to get chickens to market. But again, with water, they're going to use twice as much water as what they do feed. And again, in most cases, as long as it's there, we don't ever think about water. And that's a big mistake, especially with NAE production. So have your well water tested. Even if you don't think you've got a problem, it's good to know just exactly what's in that water from a mineral standpoint, from a pH standpoint. Because if you do have something wrong, you're not going to be able to fix it until you know it's broken. And if you haven't tested it and don't know that you've got a problem, you may have something going on that's affecting those chickens that's in the water supply that you're just not aware of. And I'm to the point anymore to where if I show up on a farm and I look, it's got bad performance or they're not doing a good job, if I look and I see good management on that farm, their drinker height is where it needs to be, pressure on the regulators where it needs to be, feeders are being managed right, litter's in good shape, air quality is good. If I can't find something wrong, but they've got serious problems with production in terms of weight gain or feed conversion or whatever, livability, I begin to suspect the water supply anymore. And water supplies can harbor all kinds of different junk in that biofilm that builds up in that line. Again, bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa. The folks at Auburn have found LT vaccine that was still alive inside regulators like that rubber bladder in that picture right there. And the chickens were vaccinated 3 weeks ago, and the vaccine virus was still alive. The chart that is showing there, that red figure, that 1,730,000 APC count, colony forming units per milliliter, that come out of a broiler house from the cool cell end off of a swab sample that I did about 3 years ago. And anything more than about 100,000 colony forming units per milliliter is considered an unacceptable water supply for chickens. And here we're looking at 17 times that much, 1.7 million colony forming units. So there's some nasty stuff in that water supply. And again, the only way they knew that was to pull a sample and figure out just exactly what was going on. So again, with NAE stuff, folks need to think ahead and not jump into an NAE program, because again, NAE is completely different than the way we grew chickens in the past. And a lot of growers today are running multiple supplements on NAE programs. And I really wonder whether a lot of this stuff is actually necessary or maybe just complicating the problem and making it worse. But again, regardless, you've got to have clean water lines between flocks. Run something through there that's going to, as best as possible, cut all your gunk out. Try to get rid of that biofilm. Try to get any scaling that's in those water lines out. Because again, all of that stuff is going to cause you grief down the road somewhere. Do not depend on a water treatment system alone. It's not reliable. If you're running something with chickens in the house, you can only run it up to a certain point and still, get the chickens to drink the water. But in between flocks, you can run stronger stuff that will cut more stuff out of your water lines if you've got something in there. And with NAE, clean before and clean after NAE are two completely different things. That little bit of antibiotic that chickens used to get at the hatchery, that little bit of antibiotic that they used to get in the feed, covered up a lot of, what I call less than stellar management practices. But now management practices are a big deal. And all of those little things that we used to be able to get away with because there was a little bit of antibiotic in the feed or a little bit of antibiotic at the hatchery saved us a lot of problems. NAE causes us to think differently about how we raise chickens. We've got to be more proactive instead of reactive today. And clean water is a whole lot more important than what it used to be. Did we medicate our way out of poor water quality in the past? I tend to probably think to some extent, yeah, we probably did. You need to know what's in that water supply today, especially on NAE programs, minerals, pH, bacteria, whatever. You may need to install or increase your filter system. Go to a Big Bubba type filter, larger cotton filters, reverse osmosis, which is really expensive. But again, reverse osmosis is another option that some folks use. Media filters, sand filters, carbon filters. There's all kinds of things you can do. But first, you've got to figure out what the problem is. Descale those water lines if you do have a lot of scale buildup, because again, scale has a rough surface and it provides a good hiding place for a lot of bacteria to grow and for biofilm to grow. pH. pH is a measure of how acidic or basic the water supply is. Again, people think the sweet spot is somewhere between 6.2 and 6.8, but I'm not too worried if you can stay in a range of 5 to 8. I do get nervous if I see samples that are down below 5, and I get a little nervous if I see samples that are up above 8, and I do that sometimes. Very low pH is also corrosive to metal components in your system, and abnormally high pHs that are greater than 8 or abnormally low, pHs that are less than 4, can decrease the effectiveness of disinfectant products such as chlorine. pH outside the desirable range also can result in digestive upsets, diarrhea, and decreased feeder water intake because they don't like the taste of that water. Now, you can fix it. You can raise or lower pH of your well water if you need to. If it's really low, a soda ash injector can be put on there and raise it up. Baking soda can raise it a little bit, but baking soda is not going to raise a 3.5 or a 4 up to a 6. It's just not strong enough to do that. You're going to have something else. But if you use a soda ash injector, again, monitor the sodium content of your water and make sure you don't have too much sodium in it and make them start flushing. Muriatic acid or maybe a weaker acid, citric acid or maybe apple cider vinegar can be injected to lower a high pH. But again, apple cider vinegar is not going to take an 8.5 down to a 6 or a 6.5 or a 7. It's going to take something stronger than that. But first, you've got to know what the pH actually is and then figure out whether you need to do something or not. This chart is just a chart of some farms that I've looked at. I talked a little bit earlier about pH problems. All of this other stuff, all of those mineral concentrations, except for that top farm. If you look over there where the sodium and the chloride concentration are in red, you see 84.8 and 1426, that's way too high. This farm, I tend to think this farm came from an area where they were doing a lot of drilling and fracking in that area. And I think they corrupted that water system somehow or another, that aquifer that this guy was pulling from, because he eventually had to switch to community water because his aquifer, he used to always do good. And once this aquifer went south, he was always on the bottom of the list. But outside of that grower, all of those other farms on all of those mineral numbers are really not bad. But look over there in the red on that pH, threes, 2.8, 2.9. This aquifer is causing all of these people grief. And I've probably got twice this many farms that's got pHs down in the 2.8, 2.9 range. Now, this aquifer is pretty shallow. It's only about 100, 150 feet deep. There's a much better aquifer that's about 700 feet deep, but nobody drills down to that one. They go to this one that's only about 150 feet deep and then they quit. But then again, they've got to deal with this kind of pH, and it's causing a lot of problems in that area. So, biofilms, develop rapidly in slow-flowing water systems where nutrients are available. Nipple drinker systems, little chickens, hot chicken house. Not a good system for preventing stuff from growing inside that chicken house. They live on very little nutrients. They cause a lot of disease damage from one flock to the next. Difficult to remove once a biofilm gets in place. They reduce the effectiveness of disinfectants. They're a breeding ground where microorganisms multiply, and they protect the bad bugs from the stuff that we're trying to use to cut them out. To some degree, we're our own worst enemies sometimes. Again, when I used to service chickens, if somebody could think of something to run through the water supply, they ran it. I don't care whether it was Kool-Aid, Gatorade, Jello, sugar water. They ran everything. Jello, everybody always run cherry. I could never get nobody to tell me why they didn't run lime or lemon or orange or raspberry. Cherry was the method of choice for Jello. But again, all of this stuff is feeding the stuff that lives in your water line. Vaccine and stabilizers, vitamins and electrolytes, antibiotics. Are the lines clean with any product after use? Do you follow this, whatever you're running, all of this sugar stuff that's got all the food supply for the bugs that you don't want to grow? Are you running something through your line after you run this to clean those lines out? Are they sanitized between flocks? Is there any kind of continuous treatment program in place? Chlorination, pH adjustment, stuff like that. In Mississippi, no, none of that stuff happens. Water moves very slowly when those chickens are small because they're not drinking very much, and it sets in those lines in that hot house for a long, long time. So the water temp will be as warm as what the inside of the house, chicken house is, and perfect for growing bad stuff in your water line. And again, everything likes water. After the birds are gone, flush those darn lines. Remove the sediment. It loosens the bacteria, slime, whatever else is in there. Mix in a trash can or a 100-gallon stock solution tank, 3% hydrogen peroxide solution. Add some kind of dye so you know when you run this hydrogen peroxide system through there that you've got it all the way through the system. Wait until it comes out the end of the line and you can see your dye, whether it's red or blue or purple or whatever. So make sure all the lines, the length of the house, are filled up. Sweep those drinkers with a broom and trigger those nipples and make sure they get clean too. Leave that 3% solution in there for 24 to 72 hours and then flush it all out. Watch for the dye. Make sure you've got it all cleaned out by the time that you get through flushing everything. Descale the lines with acid if the water supply contains minerals. Again, pH has got to be 5 or less to dissolve that scale. If you don't get the pH down low enough, you're probably not going to dissolve and cut that scale out of there. Again, leave it in the lines for 24 hours so we can do that. Flush acid from the lines. Follow that acid with some type of sanitizer, maybe a bleach at 4 to 6 ounces a gallon of stock solution. Hydrogen peroxide stock solution at 2 to 4 ounces a gallon, and then pump it into that system with a medicator at a rate of 1 ounce to a gallon of water, or 1 to 128. That will help keep that biofilm from building up and returning, and it prevents the nipples from sticking and not triggering the way they're supposed to. Again, make sure you've got the proper concentration. Putting the medicator hose in a 1-gallon container of product and just dosing it through the water line is only giving you about 1% solution in the line, and 1% is not strong enough. You've got to have 2 to 3%. So use something like a proportional pump, a quick blend, an easy mix, something like that. Or you can also use a sump pump and mix it up in a 30-gallon trash barrel. Put a gallon of product and 30 gallons of water, and you've got a 3% solution. But don't be your own worst enemy. Again, product use through the water lines has increased as companies and growers all look to solve health and management issues in the absence of antibiotics. But do you really need all of this stuff? And if you use them, make sure you clean the water lines after you do use them and understand what they are, what they do, why you're using them. What are they? Are they necessary? Is it worth the trouble and the effort to go to? Are you getting anything from them? What are their side effects from using those things? little bit on acids. Acidifiers are not actually line cleaners. They're not going to clean the line. They're going to descale your line. They're going to cut that scale out, but they're not made to clean line. And again, during high water use periods, the contact time that you're going to have in that line is going to be minimal. And you're going to get a lot of fungal blooms if you've got a lot of low pH. And you'll know if you've got that because you'll have a thick slime layer, that begins to stick on your nipples, and you'll know something's not right. So you've got to have an effective line cleaning program in place if you are going to run a lot of acids through your line. Again, disease agents are suited for water line or for water environments. Water sanitation is necessary today, especially with NAE programming. And line cleaning is absolutely crucial to the success of your poultry operation. You've got to clean the house lines and you've got to clean your supply or distribution lines. Proper concentrations and proper procedures are critical to do a good job. And be aware you may need daily sanitation. You may have something in your water that requires you to treat it on a daily basis. Again, there are several options, but you've got to do it right. Monitor to confirm that your targets are being achieved, that you're getting what you want, that the stuff is working. Problem solving, look for water restriction points if you've got something in your control room. Be aware that every time your water goes through a water filter, it goes through a 90-degree angle, it's slowing stuff down. And again, be aware that water by far is the least understood, but possibly the most important and certainly the most neglected factor of all the things that we do when we're trying to grow chickens. Know what's in that water supply, know your mineral content, know whether you've got bacteria load in there that you need to do extra cleaning on. Don't forget about the pH. Optimize your water line cleaning and sanitation program. A strong cleaning between flocks is always a good idea. Acidifiers alone are probably not enough, though. You're going to have to use some oxidizers and some sanitizers to help clean that system out. And once the system is clean, take steps to keep it clean. Don't let the biofilm build back up. Don't let the scale build back up. And be aware, again, daily treatment might be an issue. In most cases, farms that have implemented a regular line cleaning program, often report that they do a better job. The flock gets better, feed conversion's better, weight gain's better, livability's better, and they have less trouble with diseases. A little bit of simple water basics. Again, water is the most important nutrient for our flocks. We can control how clean that water supply is by what we are giving those chickens and what we're treating it with. I tend to think simple is best. The less stuff that you have to run through the drinkers, I think the better off you're going to be. And again, the birds are going to tell you if your treatment or sanitation program is working right. If it is, you're going to grow good birds and you're going to make decent money and you're going to have a good feed conversion, a good weight gain, and low livability. But good water quality can help you grow a better and healthier flock of chickens. So kind of take control, have a plan, follow that plan, be proactive, stay on top of things. Don't wait until you have a problem to start trying to figure out what to do. And be aware that a water sanitation program is really actually two different programs. One set specific method for cleaning the water lines when the houses are empty, when you can use a stronger solution and make sure you've got everything cut out of those lines. And then a set specific method for treating water with birds on the farm. So the big question is this: will you drink the water that your chickens are drinking? There's a lot of farms in Mississippi where folks will not do that. Their chickens are drinking one water source, but they're drinking a different water source at the house. Now, why is that? And what is that doing to their chickens if they're afraid to drink the same water that their chickens are drinking? With that, I'll say thank you. I'll try to answer any questions anybody's got.
Tom, you gave us a lot of great stuff there, man. You were going 1,000 miles an hour. I was having a hard time keeping. Good job, my friend. I love your last comment because I think I made that one today on a TV show that, if you're not going to drink the water, don't give it to your animals.
That's right. And a lot of people just don't think about that. But again,
after you're
afraid to drink what the chickens are drinking, again, partly because, John, they don't know what's in the stuff.
Well, and the thing is, too, though, I always tell them I wouldn't drink it out of the water line, but I would drink what's going in the water line.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tom. I had some second graders out inside a chicken house this week, and they asked me that question. Can I drink that water? I'm like, yep, you can drink that water. It's just as clean. So
yep,
really important.
Mississippi's a little bit different in Arkansas, where I come from, because a lot of people in Arkansas did sample water and they knew what was in it. But here, again, unless there is a serious issue, nobody ever samples water. And again, companies have got growers that flock after flock after flock. They don't perform. But again, when that well was drilled, nobody ever tested anything. And I don't really understand why that is, especially if you can get something for $20 that will tell you whether or not you've got good water or bad water. But still, nobody does that kind of stuff.
Well, and you're right. You just spent how many million building this facility, and you didn't spend $20 to check the water?
Yeah, just to see whether the water's good or not.
Yeah, and we are seeing an uptake in people checking water. I think it's a very important thing. We got a couple minutes here, Tom.
Well, and we've done a lot of stuff with just about everything else. I mean, we've investigated feed to death. We've got different brands of feeders, different brands of drinkers, different brands of fans. We've worked on stuff to try to get it right. But again, hardly anybody anywhere ever worries about water. Again, as long as it's there, nobody's worried about it.
But you know,
again, with NAE programs, you can't do that anymore.
It's pretty universal across all animal production.
Yeah.
It's something we took for granted.
As long as it's there, we've just neglected it. Yep. That as long as it's there, it's fine. Well, as long as it's there, it's really not fine anymore. And NAE has brought a lot of that stuff to the surface.
All right, I'm gonna do a story with you. You talked about pumping out of ponds. Remember the last low-path AI outbreak in Arkansas on that breeder farm? What were they doing?
Yes, I know. That's how I got there. Absolutely. Yep.
When you said that, that just went through my mind. I'm like, oh, that was a mess. I remember that.
Yeah, it's risky to do. And, years ago, a lot of people did that. But again, we've learned a lot over the years, but we still do things that don't make a whole lot of sense. So.
Thanks, Tom. John, you want to give an update on what's coming up just while we're recording? So
next month, we're not going to do anything in January because it's Dell Ag Month, and there will be some talks in Dell Ag Month. I know one of them is the night of the 18th.
Georgie, can you type those in?
Yeah, Georgie's going to type it in. So the commercial ones, I know it's the 18th. Is that terrible? But for us, our next one is going to be at the new MDA building. We're going to have a new and potential grower training for anybody that's new, and we're going to do that on February 4th. And that'll be an all-day workshop. Dell Ag Month is January 12th, and that one will be from 1 to 3, and then on the 18th from 6 to 8. All right. Well, thanks again, Tom. We really appreciate it.
Hey, if I can help you with anything, I'm always glad to do so.
8.
Hold on. We got a question.
Oh.
Any difference between chlorine dioxide products and ProxiClean for cleaning and maintaining lines?
ProxiClean is pretty good. There's a lot of folks here, when they're trying to clean, they do use ProxiClean. Chlorine dioxide is a little more difficult, I think, to work with. And I don't know of a single soul in Mississippi right now that's actually got a chlorine dioxide system. But chlorine dioxide probably works as good or better than what ProxiClean is. You may have to manage it a little bit differently because it may be a little tougher to get your system set up the way you need to. But I think both of them are fine.
Yeah, we do have chlorine dioxide systems here on the shore. They're very popular with, they're becoming much more popular in the organic side and stuff like that. So
I bet on the organic side it probably is. Yep.
And you're right. But if you do have them, maintaining them, they have to be maintained and functioning properly. But you're absolutely right on that. All righty. Well, then we're going to let Tom go. But we really appreciate your time, Tom. Thanks so much. And
I'm always glad to work with you folks. I enjoy working with everybody over on the shore. So if
anytime you need anything, holler at us, man. Because
it goes both ways. It's always good seeing everybody.
Thanks.
Tom.
See ya.
All righty. Thank you.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.